Campaigning in a climate of fear and violence in Pakistan, bombings and intimidation mar the run-up to the most critical elections in the country's history. Some political parties are being targeted by the Pakistani Taliban, putting democracy to the test. This is Inside Story. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Hanna. Three of Pakistan's main political parties have been singled out as targets for attacks, throwing campaigning for parliamentary elections into a deadly chaos. The threat has come from Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, the Pakistani Taliban. The parties concerned are considered secular with no religious leanings. They are the Pakistan People's Party, which led the outgoing government, and its coalition partners, the Karachi-based MQM or Muttahida Qawmi Movement, and the Pashtun nationalist AMP or Awami National Party, the target of the latest attack in Peshawar on Tuesday. The coalition is the first civilian government to complete its full 5-year term in office in the country's 66-year history. But near-daily attacks in major cities throughout Pakistan have heightened concerns over security and thrown the entire democratic process into question. For Inside Story in Islamabad, here's Kamal Haider.
On the 11th of May, the Pakistanis will go to the polls in what is considered to be the most crucial election in the country's history. Already you can see the different various banners on the electricity posts. However, there are security threats and also acts of violence in at least 3 provinces. In the province of Sindh, the Muttahida Qawmi Movement leader has been killed. The Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan has taken responsibility for that. The Baluch separatists have also warned their leaders not to participate in the elections. They have already attacked one of the Baluch leaders from the Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz, killing his nephew, son and brother in that attack. However, the situation in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province is the one that is of real concern. There, the Awami National Party, which had a split mandate and ruled the province, has come under a direct threat from the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. They have struck several times, killing several key leaders of the Awami National Party. But it is also the performance of the outgoing coalition, composing of the Pakistan People's Party, the Muttahida Qawmi Movement and the Awami National Party, that has not done a job which the people had anticipated. There have been accusations of rampant corruption, and the people of Pakistan are not happy with their performance. However, the situation for them will be complicated even further, given the fact that the Taliban are warning to hit them hard. Kamal Haider for Inside Story, Islamabad.
Well, we'll go to our panel of guests in a moment, but first, joining me on the line from Peshawar is Ilyas Bilur from the Awami National Party. Well, 15 people killed in Peshawar on Tuesday, dozens killed in earlier attacks. Mr. Bilur, are these attacks aimed at disrupting these democratic elections?
You know, I'm a secular Muslim. I'm not atheist. I'm a secular Muslim. I pray for 5 times in a day, and I'm much better Muslim than a mullah. I'm not a mullah, but I'm a Muslim. And a secular Muslim, undoubtedly. That is no doubt that I'm a Muslim, but secular Muslim. I'm a Muslim and I'm not a mullah. Number 2, they say that the people are saying they are hitting us because that they think and they say that we are Americans, we have been following the American policy. Basically, actually, they have got a big misconception. And they are the agent of the American, they were the agent of the American Jamaat-e-Islami. The earliest Jamaat-e-Islami was the only agent of the American. And we used to be called as agent of India, then agent of Russia, because we have told them so many times, our leadership has told them not to take this money from America and don't try to destroy the Russian. They were proud they have destroyed the Russian, and because of that, who has trained the Russian, who has destroyed the Russian, who has distributed this dollar money? That was only party, parties from this Jamaat-e-Islami and all those people. They have distributed the money.
But Mr. Baliur, if I may just interject there very quickly, is this campaign intent on disrupting the elections, the democratic process, do you believe?
Yeah, they are trying to stop us from the election because we are winning. Although we have been given a lot of nuisance publicity by so many people, that a lot of corruption and everything. If we are corrupt, the people will not vote for us. If we are corrupt, people will not go for vote for us. Let us give us a level playing field. Everything will be clear.
Well, Ilyas Baliur, thank you so much for joining us on the line from Peshawar. And at this point, let's bring in our other guests. In Islamabad, Shireen Mizari, spokeswoman for Imran Khan's Movement for Justice Party. Joining us from our Washington studios, Hassan Abbas, a security analyst and former government official under Benazir Bhutto and Pervez Musharraf. And in Lahore, Ali Dayan Hassan, director of Pakistan Human Rights Watch. Let's begin with Shireen Mizari. The Movement for Justice, or the PTI, has been largely silent about the attacks on other parties to date. Do you as a movement condemn these attacks that have been on the other parties?
Yes, we have. We have been today, a fresh condemnation was issued. Last night, I went on TV to condemn the attacks very vociferously on behalf of PTI. Mr. Khan's condemnation statement came and ran on the tickers late last night, on television, on the social media. So I think you're not well informed when you're saying that we are silent. We are absolutely not silent. We condemn all the terrorist attacks because this is an attempt, these are attacks against Pakistan and its democratic system. They're an attempt to derail democracy and the elections, and therefore the target at the end of the day is the whole Pakistani nation. So there is absolutely no way we would remain silent on these attacks.
Let's go to Ali Dayan Hassan in Lahore. It does appear that these attacks are aimed at disrupting the political process, are they not?
Yes, absolutely. It is quite clear that they are an attempt essentially to derail this election and to somehow prevent this transition from taking place. It is also very worrying that because of this selective targeting of particular political parties, the credibility of the entire exercise is coming into question, even if it does take place, because what is happening is that it is becoming clear that this is simply not going to be a level playing field for all political parties.
Well, let's go back to Dr. Shireen Mizari on that. You made precisely that point, that what is needed is a level playing field, and that is not happening with this ongoing violence.
Yes, because we want a level playing field for all the political parties, and today Mr. Khan's statement emphasizes the point that this is the government and the security structures of the country's responsibility to ensure that fair and free elections are held so that the results are credible, and we cannot have that if there is no level playing field. We want to win the elections fairly and squarely, and in any case we absolutely despise and we condemn any attempt to use violence against any political leader, political party, because this is not an acceptable form of democracy. And if we are making the transition, all parties must be able to contest fairly and freely, so people are able to elect them on their merit, because while certain parties are being targeted, it also impacts the other parties and their standing. So unless, and there seems to be a strange, silence, where is the human intelligence and the security setup? Where has that disappeared? There were warnings that there would be violence in the elections, and yet we find nothing at all. The president is remaining absolutely silent, and he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the security setup that goes with it. So there is something very strange happening. There are forces in the country and outside that do not want elections at this particular time, and unfortunately we are playing into their hands. But I want to emphasize, we feel because of this violence, it's even more critical that the elections are held on time so that a strong, clean government is in place to tackle this menace of terrorism.
Well, we'll go touch on the issue of security in a moment, but first let's go to Hassan Abbas in Washington, D.C. to pick up on that question. To what extent the integrity of the process is being threatened? We've heard from both panelists now that the integrity of the electoral process itself is under threat because of this violence.
Yes, I think in some ways it is, but in another way, this was not something totally unexpected. I think this is a great transformative moment for Pakistan, a transition from one democratic government to the other, and there are great political choices in front of people. But at the same time, we must recognize that there are some serious schisms within state, within society, which are coming up. Pakistan has been facing the terrorist threat for quite some time. There are groups and there are elements who are against the very notion of democracy, and their tool and their weapon is terrorism, and they are using it and they are sending multiple messages. And the state structure and the capacity of the state is being exposed when they are not doing much to stop it. In fact, they are not being able to do anything to stop it, and that's a real and serious moment of worry for anyone who's interested in Pakistan's future.
Well, let's just pause at the moment and take a look at the parliamentary polls scheduled for May the 11th will mark the first time an elected government will hand over power to another elected government. A third period of military rule began to unravel when Pervez Musharraf shed his general's uniform in November 2007 to become a civilian president. But by August the following year, he was gone completely, resigning in the face of moves to force him from office. He was succeeded by Asif Ali Zardari, husband of the assassinated Benazir Bhutto and co-chairman of the Pakistan People's Party. In April 2010, Zardari proposed sweeping constitutional reforms aimed at transferring key powers from the office of the president to that of the prime minister. And this weekend, for the first time in Pakistan, a democratically elected civilian government was able to stand down after completing a full 5-year term. Well, there has been much criticism of the governing coalition, yet some argue that the very fact that it managed to see out its term is in itself a step forward. Hassan Abbas, your view on that?
I think it is indeed a step forward. There's no two views about it. There were serious challenges when the previous government had taken over 5 years ago. People had voted out religious parties, people had voted in progressive parties like People's Party, like ANP, Awami National Party, like MQM in Karachi. These are progressive forces. But also, that was the time when terrorism incidents were rising, when those extremist groups which wanted to define Pakistan as they saw fit, they were expanding their space. And the economic challenges were serious. There was a transition from dictatorship to democracy. There was this new power that had come into the hands of an independent Supreme Court, which was quite assertive. At times, people think overly assertive. So there were all these serious challenges. So the government of Pakistan, in center and in provinces, in Punjab and elsewhere, they faced it, I think, courageously. Yes, there were serious failures in economic terms, serious failures in cohesion, serious failures, if I may say, in security sector. But overall, Pakistan moved forward. And this has come to a point where democracy is maturing, and I think groups like Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, PTI, which is a great new addition to the Pakistani politics. There are other political parties which are transforming, which are changing their focus, which are talking more about domestic politics, which are talking more about enhancing the capacity of police and civilian law enforcement rather than overly depending on the military for security. These are all positive steps. But I want to say that people of Pakistan have very high hopes and high expectations from the next government. And I fear that those expectations may not be fulfilled, not because politicians will not try to put in their best. It is because the economic and security challenges today that Pakistan are facing are a product of 20-30 years of mismanagement. It is not going to be possible to change Pakistan overnight. It requires vision, it requires dedication, it requires patience.
Well, let's just go at this particular point, if I may, Hassan Abbas. I'd like to go to Ali Dayan Hassan and pick up on a specific point, the issue of security. There's been criticism of the government for its handling of the economy, but there's been deep criticism too about its apparent inability to deal with a consistent security threat, not only directed against political movements, but also religiously based violence, where we've seen some 300 Shia killed in particular attacks in this year alone. Has the government failed its people in terms of enforcing its security? Is it unable to, or did it not want to?
Well, I think actually what we are seeing is first in the 5 years of the democratic government and also now under the caretaker government is essentially a crisis of the state's capacity to ensure security. This is a crisis of the state. It is not necessarily a crisis of any government. And this is, of course, exacerbated by the fact that that whoever is running the state deals with this lack of capacity by seeking to appease extremist groups, whether it is the Taliban or whether it is those targeting the Shia. And actually, what you're seeing is something very disingenuous happening, which is that the Taliban are allowing those parties that seek to appease them or relatively seek to appease them a playing field where they can in fact campaign, and are effectively shutting out parties that oppose them. Now, the question, of course, is how this matter is to be dealt with. And of course, there are no short-term solutions. But one thing is absolutely clear, which is that within the Pakistani state, and I would like to separate politicians from the state. By the state, I mean the bureaucracy, I mean the administration, I mean the law enforcement agencies, the intelligence agencies, the military. They have a persistent duality of approach in how to deal with extremist groups. Are they going to actually hold them accountable? Are they going to impose the writ of the state in a rights-respecting manner? Or are they going to seek to appease them? I'm afraid that is a contradiction that stands unresolved to date. And until it is resolved, Pakistan, the security situation is going to remain extremely precarious. And these challenges of extremism and militancy are going to remain unaddressed in any meaningful manner.
Well, if we just take one concrete example, you have a movement like Lashkar al-Junghi, a Sunni militant group which has claimed responsibility for some of those attacks on Shia people, which has led to so much loss of life. The leader of that movement is under house arrest, but the movement itself still appears to be able to operate certainly very effectively, as we have tragically seen. Shireen Mazari, where does the failure lie? We've heard there that it's a crisis of state rather than a crisis of governance, but we also have questions asked about the security apparatus. Is there this policy of appeasement underway by the security apparatus, by those who are supposed to be guarding the people of Pakistan?
I don't think that's the case, because one of the major losses of life has been by the security personnel, law enforcers, the military. I think it's a combination of having an inept and corrupt government. And I just want to take up this point about, yes, 5 years of civilian government completed its term, and it's laudable. But the fact that it did was not so much by its own competency as by the fact that all political parties supported this government in the completion of the term, the fact that the judiciary was independent and enforced civilian supremacy over the military. It was the first time in our history that the military had to face the judiciary in terms of disappeared people and so on. So I think it was the civil society, the civilians, all the political players, the stakeholders that allowed an inept and incompetent government to complete its term. But the security situation is not as simple as people having duality of standards. I think it is actually, there is a failure of intelligence. Our intelligence services have to be really revamped. I think there's a disconnect between information flows between the civil and the military. So I think it's a combination of inept government and a security structure that really needs to be revamped and restructured more efficiently.
Well, let's just quickly pause here and take a look at comments on the Facebook page. Shanawaz Shah says, there is zero support for democracy among the public in Pakistan. Pakistanis don't digest democracy. The country is in chaos, and it started only after 9/11 when Pakistan sided with America. Billy Jones tells us the Taliban has always used violence and intimidation to get what they want. Question is there a market over there for this type of behavior? I say there is. Genevieve Connor goes on, elections are useless, the puppets are all manipulated, whatever party they represent. And Gareth Hurley asks, did democracy ever exist in Pakistan? Well, whether regardless of the answer to that particular question, I'd like to go to Ali Dayan Hassan and ask the question, can democracy survive this intense violence that we've seen in recent months?
You know, the fact of the matter is that the only effective way of combating this intense violence is to have a rights-respecting democratic process in Pakistan. In a sense, Pakistan has no other option because it has repeatedly tried military rule, and military rule engenders further abuse and impunity for abuses, both for the military and for militant groups that the military have supported, and generally creates a non-transparent structure of governance where it is impossible to hold anybody accountable, including civilian proxies of the military that have been in power. So democracy, and a rights-respecting democracy, and an accountable democracy is really the only way forward for Pakistan. There is simply no other option.
Shireen Mazari, your view of that, no other option than democracy for Pakistanis?
Oh, I think if ever there was a time when democracy was needed badly in Pakistan, it is at this moment. So I agree with Ali totally on that. And I don't agree that Pakistanis don't want democracy. If you see the exuberance, especially amongst the youth, which has embraced the democratic structures that PTI provided in terms of intra-party elections and so on, it's absurd to think that Pakistanis do not want democracy. They crave for democracy. They're ready to fight for it. And I think there is no other solution, especially at this moment in time for Pakistan.
Well, Hassan Abbas, your view on that? We're looking at perhaps some 30 million new voters will be coming in those elections in a month's time. Young Pakistanis who've never voted before. This an absolutely critical time, as we heard there from Dr. Mazari, is it not?
I think absolutely the real hope is the youth bulge and the young people who would participate, and we can see they are very vibrant. But I would like to point out that there are some larger issues which are different from this issue of how many people will participate, and that is linked to the overall Pakistani policy, regional policy, and what is happening in the region. My argument is that so long as there's this crisis in Afghanistan, so long as the tribal areas of Pakistan are not brought into the mainstream, so long as Pakistani tension with India continues, and I think both India and Pakistan are responsible for that almost equally, and so long as there's this disconnect between United States and Pakistan for a variety of reasons, so long as these challenges will continue, irrespective of who comes in, I think Pakistan will continue to face this issue of security challenge, which is having a negative impact on anything. Yes, there's hope with young people. Yes, there's hope with transition of democracy, and no doubt I agree with both your panelists. There's no way out but democracy. But regional security challenges and international politics and tensions, I think, are also a factor which has to be kept in view.
Shireen Mazari, very quickly, is the issue of Pakistan's foreign relations, in particular its relationship with the United States, going to be an election issue?
I think the US is very much an election issue, especially its war on terror. And every party has its own position. We have our position. And certainly foreign policy to some extent is an issue. But at the end of the day, the major issues still continue to be internal terrorism, which is of course now enmeshed with our external terrorist problem, and the US. Also economic issues. Let's not forget justice, corruption. These are major issues in the Pakistan election today. And at the end of the day, yes, all the problems will remain, but if you have a good, clean, strong government which is bent on giving to the people what it needs, then we will resolve these issues. I think we are extremely hopeful, and the hope is not just something out in a bubble. It's a real hope, because Pakistan has its strength as its people, and if the people choose wisely and the government is responsive, I think we would be able to overcome these problems.
Well, at that particular point, thank you to my guests, Dr. Shireen Mazari, Hassan Abbas, and Ali Dayan Hassan. And thank you for joining us. Don't forget you can find this program and many more at aljazeera.com. Just follow the links for programs and Inside Story, and you can leave us your comments there too. I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.